Hello, and welcome to another indie book review. And I have said that so many times, and I never get bored of it. Today, I am reviewing my second poetry book ever, and this is the poetry book that I have been waiting for, and that is Radiant Souls by Lenee H. Now, I have been waiting for this book in two ways. One, Lenee and I connected on Twitter a little while ago based on a shared love of Evie Callahan from the Mummy franchise and Rachel Weisz and how fantastic she is and queer things, and we've just talked so much since then. She's one of my favorite Twitter mutuals, and so of course I wanted to read one of her poetry books. But more than that, I've been looking for this kind of poetry in general for a while. I am a naturally positive, upbeat person, more by design after years of getting tired of suffering from psychosomatic related physical issues from stress. I get things like stress nausea very easily, and so I have to stay positive. But if you've read a lot of modern poetry, especially, you know that it's resoundingly not positive. And obviously that's all on the poet, and the poet usually writes for themselves, and letting the reader read it is really just a kind of catharsis for them. It's not truly meant for the reader in most cases, and so you tend to get a lot of thoughts on depression and that kind of thing, and that's needed. But when a poetry book tends to be all or majority depressing topics, it can be hard to get through. And that's where Radiant Souls comes in. There is very, very much things about disliking yourself and depression and that kind of thing. But what I really appreciated was it almost felt like an even 50-50 battle between the depressing aspects and the struggles, as well as the fighting back and the focusing on how awesome you are or how awesome other people are. And unlike a lot of poetry books that are made specifically for the poet, Lenee actually did write a lot of things for specific people. She wrote poetry for family members like her father, and I believe there's one for her sister. I was really impressed. I actually had to ask her because there were some poems that had the word they used in a singular sense. And so I messaged her and I said, hey, the use of they in these poems, is it meant to be like the metaphorical they that so many poems use, or are we very pointedly referring to non-binary recipients? And she says that she has many non-binary friends, and as a result, she wanted to have genderless poems that they could connect to as well. And I really appreciated that. I've made a lot of non-binary friends myself through BookTube, you know, the likes of Brody and Rhiannon and all of them. And so I was really happy that there was some representation. There's a lot of sapphic representation. I don't recall if Lenee is, I don't know where she falls in the queer spectrum, but she very much is queer. At this point in time, you know, I'm a bisexual married to a man, so most people would assume I'm straight, so I can't assume that, you know, she's gay because she has a female partner. But there's a lot of love poetry to women in here, which I appreciated. And there was so many poetry that was just like straight compliments. That was just like, I'm going to describe this person and how fantastic they are. And that's it. No like sudden twist. No, not even like a romantic love poem. There was just some ones that was like, you know, hey, you're awesome, and I'm going to put it in rhyme. And there were poems that rhymed in here. And I know that it's not a necessity, and I know that most modern poetry doesn't have it, but I like a good rhyme, okay? You have to work harder for the rhyme. You have to twist your words and your syllables and use the right word to make it all fit. Like, I love the inner workings of putting together rhyming poetry a lot, and this one has it. There's also some of the formatting that's, you know, one sentence, the poem's thesis more or less, reused repeatedly for emphasis, and I love that kind of poetry. There were, like I mentioned before, there were some dark parts, but the one I loved the most was so many of these poems were meant to uplift the reader. One of my personal favorites, and I remember the page number, haha. Yeah, so page 33, it talks about someday someone will accept the loathed piece of you. And it says, someday someone will love, someday someone will forgive. And it talks about this someday someone. And at the very bottom it says, and someday you will see that person should be you. So there's a lot of emphasis on self-love. There's another one, and I don't remember the page number for that one, that I also loved, that compares the way you see yourself to a cross stitch, which I thought was one of the best metaphors. If you've never seen a cross stitch from both sides, the front has like the nice little needle point and this perfect picture, but the back is like this tattered mess of thread crisscrossing, and it looks like a jumble. And the poem basically says, you're looking on the other side of this cross stitch, you're seeing the tangled mess, but everyone else can see the beautiful image that's there. And like, I texted and sent that to my mom because she loves cross stitch and sentimental things. And this is just so many poems in here, and I haven't done it yet because I actually, fun fact, read the library version of this, and that video will be coming out soon. I'm really happy with that. But I didn't get a chance to write in that one, so I just got the physical copy from Lenee, and I am like so prepared to take a highlighter to this baby and just highlight it, and it's gonna notes, and oh, it's gonna be so good. Because so many of these poems could actually be used for self-affirmation and giving yourself encouragement, and I love that. I believe I've already put one of these definitely on Twitter. Have I put it also on Instagram? I might have. But these are like very much Instagram poems. As you can see, well, I just turned to a big one. Let me find a smaller one. They're fairly smallish with a lot of room. So for like, I'm gonna fill this with notes. And it also works to take a picture, like they fit perfectly in the square you get for an Instagram photo if you're into that kind of thing. And yeah, some of them are longer, but in general, I mean, it reads quickly, like you would expect from a poetry book. And I also enjoy that the radiant souls of the title is in like the last poem it talks about it. And also, ooh, okay, so this at the end, I totally forgot about this. She was doing Lenee was doing a kind of promotion where if you bought the book during X weekend, you would give her a word and she would come up with a poem just for you in the back. And because there's this empty page right here. And so I was like, well, I had just gone to a wrestling show that night. So I was like, okay, my word is wrestling. So I've not read this before, but now we're going to read this poem that she came up with based on the word I gave her. So let's see. I thought it was normal in love, this wrestling to keep each other, a tug of war between ourselves, between the demons in our minds, and the desire settled in our hearts. But all we ever did was create more demons within each other, and neither of us were angelic. Ooh, fancy. I appreciate that. And I get that the word wrestling isn't that normal to use in poetry, but I appreciate that she took the challenge, and that's really cool that now I have a book with like an original poem, not in any other book by the poet. I also think that's a really awesome promotion. In general, I'd love to see that done more. Like if more indie authors were like, if you buy the physical copy, you'll get some random extra fact in the back or something like that. I probably would buy more physical books, since when I'm buying myself, I'm usually an ebook reader. But in general, I love this for the pickup it provides. I think I've mentioned before, but most of the time in my general outside of reviewing poetry reading life, I don't necessarily sit down, open a poetry book, and read it page by page. I do more of like a seeking thing where I kind of open and I'll skim a few pages for the thing that's calling to me at the moment or something like that. In this case, I might like have to like keep track of the poems that I specifically like the most to look back over. But I just love how positive this was. I have not read the first edition. This is not the first poetry collection Lenee has released. She has another one called, oh crap, I knew it, Cosmic something, Editing Margaret. Thank you. So I probably will go, I think I have that one in ebook form. I'll have to double check. But that one I'll probably just read on my own. This one though, I'm really happy I got to review it. Random aside, love the minimalist cover. I think it works. It's very similar to the cover of her first one. So she's definitely got an aesthetic going, and it goes really well. She's a ton of fun to follow on Twitter, and in general, I'm excited for the next one because I need all the poems about how I am a warrior that can take on anything, as well as the poems all about how we should be embracing peace. I love both sides. So check this out if you love poetry. Even if you don't, I feel like this is a book for people who maybe don't normally love standard poetry as much, but it's very descriptive, a lot of use of color in general. It's a lot like classic poetry, but only if classic poetry was woke, I believe is what I said in my written review, and I really appreciated that. I am getting so close to being open again for more reviews. This one and some others, I'm coming through. I'm getting it done. I'm so close. So definitely by the end of September. Hopefully. But thank you for being patient. This was so much fun. If you haven't read a lot of poetry, what do you think you would like? If you've read a ton, is there a kind of poetry book that you've maybe been missing that you'd like to see more of? And I can't think of any other comments for the questions below. So, with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.